Welcome to our physical geology class, which will include many topics about general geology like weathering, volcanoes, earthquakes, uh, rocks and minerals, crystals. So you'll have general idea about what is geology in this course. Today our class will start talking about weathering. As all of us know that our earth is made up of rocks, and these rocks are composed of minerals, and the earth itself is changing, and because earth is changing, then rocks are getting changed too. So weathering actually is a process that we can define as a physical disintegration or chemical alteration of rocks at or near the earth's surface. So everything that's happening to these rocks closer to the surface of the earth by actions or by factors like wind and rain, as we will talk later, we call it weathering. So the weathering is different from erosion. Erosion is the removal of the and transportation of the weathered materials. So we have rocks have to have this weathering operation or process first by actions of wind and rain and so on. Then erosion process comes to remove and transport all weathered materials by water, wind and ice or gravity. Okay? So there are some factors control the weathering process. Composition and structure of the rock. What I mean here is the composition and structure of the rock, if it is hard or soft, it is like solid or not solid. All these kind of states will change the ability of rock to be cracked easily or not. Also the nature of the ground slope. If you have a very steep slope, so you have less weathering. If you have gentle slope, you have great degree of weathering, because the exposure will, the rock will be exposed to those factors more than the steep dipping. Okay. And also climate variation. Whenever you have cold and heat and cold, temperature high and low, all this stuff will affect the rocks and make them, susceptible to weathering by cracking and other features. Floral effects, also one of the factors that affect weathering. Other things like wind and glaciers, running water, sea waves, underground water, all these are agents of weathering. So what are the types of weathering? We have three main types of weathering: physical weathering, chemical weathering, and biological weathering. Let's start with the first type of weathering, which is physical weathering, and it is also known as a mechanical weathering. Actually, we call it mechanical weathering because it always, include a lot of movement and mechanical things happening to the rocks, like transportation, things get fractured. So it's mechanical, not only physical, but mechanical too. So mechanical weathering is a physical disintegration and reduction in the size of rocks without changing their chemical composition. We have to keep in mind that without changing their chemical composition, because if it includes changing in the chemical composition, this will take us to another type of weathering. We call it chemical weathering. Examples of mechanical weathering are exfoliation, frost wedging, salt wedging, and abrasion. Physical weathering always happen due to changing in temperature, freezing actions of water, and roots that are growing, plant roots. These also affects the rocks and cause disintegration. So mechanical weathering is physical disintegration and reduction in the size of rocks without a changing in their chemical composition. And the types of this are exfoliation, frost wedging, salt wedging, temperature changes, and these figures or these pictures actually show some examples of mechanical weathering. Okay, let's start with the first one, frost wedging. Frost wedging, it's a mechanical weathering as we know, but this type is caused by freezing action of water. You know, when you have water like comes from rain or from different sources and they get in the cracks of the rocks and they get freezed, when they freezes, they expand and apply pressure to the surrounding rocks, like making them, they push those cracks out to make the rock fracture more. This picture shows the frost wedging. So we have the first one on the left, water filled crack with water inside. Then this water freezes to ice. Then the ice, of course, has different size or volume than water. Then this will press out those two parts of the rock and make the rock breaks. And this process actually weakens, cracks, and breaks the rock through repetition. Every time it happens, through repetition, the rock will crack or break more and more. Okay, now we come to temperature changes. Daily seasonal temperature changes affect minerals and facilitates mechanical weathering because we have morning temperature, night temperature, we have also winter temperature, we have summer temperature. So these variation in temperature also affect this kind of mechanical weathering. So warmer temperature, for example, they cause some minerals to expand in volume and size, and cooler temperature cause them to contract and get smaller size. Okay, so the expansion and contraction of this process of expansion and contraction will weaken the rock and cause it to break to small fragments. And we usually find this kind of weathering in desert climates because they experience extreme fluctuation in daily temperature. We have them, very cold night, very hot in daytime, and so on. But keep in mind, this type of weathering, not the dominant. It is not the common one, but instead tend to accelerate other forms of weathering. Okay? Mechanical weathering, a second type of mechanical weathering is salt wedging. Salt wedging comes because of when salts crystallize out of solution. You have a lot of solutions that they contain salt and other like minerals or elements. So when they crystallize out of solution and then the water evaporates, then you will have those salt crystals grow, and same thing, same scenario as ice. They apply pressure to the surrounding rock and weakening it, make them weak. until they crack. Okay, because salt crystals needs to grow more, and this kind or this type of mechanical weathering, which we call it salt wedging, is common in drier climates such as desert too. Okay. The third type of mechanical weathering is abrasion, in which rocks collide against each other, remove all angularity, and transported by water and ice, or even gravitational force. And during this process, actually, rocks may also weather the bedrocks underneath them because they come in direct contact with those rocks. And also this will cause breaking into smaller particles and eventually individual grains. For today, this is enough, and it's time for the next type of weathering. Bye.